Welcome back, AP Psychology. So we are going to finish up our videos on the biological basis of behavior, and we need to look at the concepts of lateralization and split brain procedures. And these are really interesting and fascinating ideas. The split brain procedures is one of those topics in this unit that can be kind of a stumbling point. So I'm going to introduce it to you here in this video, and then we will definitely revisit it again when we're together in class. So first we need to cover the idea of something called association areas. And association areas exist in your brain, and these are parts of the cerebral cortex that are uncommitted, meaning they don't have a responsibility to sensory and motor functioning. They are actually involved in higher mental functioning. So one of those association areas is the Wernicke's area, and we've talked about the Wernicke area before when we've talked about language. The Wernicke's area is actually located in the left temporal lobe, and it's responsible for language comprehension and expression. The other association area that you should know and that you've heard about before is the Broca's area. And again, it's located in the left frontal lobe. And again, both on the left side. The left side of the brain is associated with our ability to use language. The Broca's area is responsible for directing motor movement involved in speech, which means moving your mouth and producing those words. The words come out of your mouth, la boca, if you remember the silly way to remember that. So as we talk about association areas, now we're going to look again at the hemispheres of the brain. And this is kind of a cool picture here. And the reality is they're very symmetrical. They're roughly mirror images of each other. They function as two separate brains, really left and right brain. They've got different responsibilities other than through the corpus callosum, which brings them together and helps the two sides of the brain communicate with one another. The right side of the body, you already know this, is controlled by the left hemisphere. The left side of the body is controlled by the right hemisphere. So just a little bit of review by wanting to set the stage again as we get ready to talk about split brain procedures. Another piece of review. If you go back and look at the diagram that you have that talks about the responsibilities and the jobs of the right and left brain and those different hemispheres, and ideas like language, thinking in words, words to songs, logic, all of those are left brain responsibilities, whereas the right brain is much more concerned with the sounds that music make versus the lyrics, creativity, intuition, your feelings, being able to read a person's tone just by the way that they say something. So the right and left brain have some different responsibilities and different tasks. So now we need to look at something called brain plasticity. It's also called neuroplasticity. And if you think about plastic is very bendable. And what this is implying is that the brain also has some flexibility, and it has the ability to be plastic, which means adaptable. And this is something we know only through research. And it's the brain's ability to continuously change throughout your life as long as you use it. If you don't use a part of your brain, you will lose that part of your brain, meaning that it literally can shrink in size. People who are disabled and might be visually impaired or hearing impaired, the reality is because of neuroplasticity, other parts of their brains actually grow and take over because it has to work to compensate for the lack of visual ability or hearing ability. So brain activity associated with a certain function can be transferred to a different location, particularly if the original area becomes damaged. And that damage could be a result of a traumatic injury. It could be the result of an illness, cancer, stroke. It could also be a result of an actual surgery that's done to help relieve things like seizures. So this is where we are about to go. So when we think about a split brain procedure, we know that the cerebral cortex is divided into the left and the right hemisphere. And what connects those two hemispheres, the sum brings them together, is the corpus callosum. To better understand lateralization of the brain and how certain functions are in only one hemisphere, the split brain procedures are done, and we learn from these split brain patients. And it really has helped science understand the function and the role that the different hemispheres play in our behavior. And so to split the brain, it's a surgical procedure. And again, just questioning you, a little quiz question here, what part of the brain is going to be severed or cut so that those brain hemispheres are no longer talking to each other? And in the case of an epileptic patient, might help to relieve some of those seizures. The corpus callosum, yes. So surgery allows the two hemispheres to be split from each other. And again, this is only necessary in severe cases of epilepsy, but it could also happen, and parts of the corpus callosum could be impacted, as I just said, by things like stroke, traumatic brain injury, an illness, and those types of things. There are side effects that we can observe in these patients that really is going to help us understand the specializations of each hemisphere. And this is where it can get a bit tricky and a bit hard to understand. So again, I'm going to lay this all out. I'm going to explain it to you, but I highly encourage you to seek out your textbook for an additional explanation to make sure that you really understand what's happening with the split brain procedure. So because we know, and you have to remember the idea that, especially with vision, that our left hemisphere is going to be taking in information from our right field of vision, and our left field of vision is going to be taking in information and sending it to the right hemisphere. So we're going to use this example and hopefully try to explain and help you understand just what the results are. So imagine that you are a split brain patient. You're sitting at a computer screen in this first image here. And the instructions are to look at the dot on the screen. And so you can see this, obviously we've enhanced this picture so that, or adapted this picture so that the person sitting there has the open brain. But they're looking at the dot. And then on the screen is going to be flashed the word heart, H-E-A-R-T. But as you can see from the image, the word heart is separated. And so in the left field of vision, you will see H-E. And then in your right field of vision, you're going to see the letters A-R-T. So again, if our thinking about how vision works and which side of the brain is going to process those letters, HE is going to be sent to the right hemisphere, seeing it in the left field of vision, and ART taken in by the right field of vision, that will be sent to the opposite side to the left hemisphere. So now the researcher is going to ask the individual, what did you see? What did you see? So they can verbalize, use their words, use their language. They can verbalize that they saw the letters A-R-T. It was in their right field of vision. That information gets sent to the left hemisphere. The left hemisphere has the ability to speak your language. You can use words. However, the corpus callosum would typically allow both hemispheres to talk to each other. And so the person without a split brain procedure would have said all of those letters. But because the corpus callosum is not there, what was sent to the right hemisphere, they are unable to communicate that because they saw it with their left hemisphere. It was sent to the right hemisphere. The right hemisphere doesn't have the ability to use language and speak those words. Hence, they only replied that they could see the word art, A-R-T. However, they could, when given the prompt, point with your left hand to the word that you saw. The left hand is directed by the right hemisphere, and the right hemisphere saw the words H-E. So the person couldn't verbalize it, but they could point with their left hand at the words H-E. All right, so that might be a bit confusing. I encourage you to hit stop and replay to follow through and make sure you understand that. Or hit stop and look at the images and what these images are explaining to you so that you understand this process, because this is a favorite one of the College Board. So here's a little scenario here. So you have a split brain patient and they're flashed a picture of an apple to their right visual field. Based on what we know on the research of split brain patients, which of the following would occur? So take a second, hit pause, read through those choices, and decide what the correct answer is before you jump over to the next frames to see the correct answer. So the correct answer would be A and B. The patient can verbalize that they saw the apple because they see it in the right. It's transferred to the left hemisphere. The left hemisphere has language abilities. They can say, I see an apple. B is also correct because something that we know in this process is that the motor cortex isn't necessarily lateralized, meaning your ability to write doesn't necessarily uniquely belong to either the right or the left. It's not specialized to one hemisphere. So this is a concept you're going to need a little practice and some work on. And so again, check Google Classroom for some additional videos, and be sure that you rewind, rewatch, and check your textbook to make sure you understand split brain. There we go. We are done.